to Arsenal News TV, and today we're going to do the instant reaction and player ratings for Arsenal versus Manchester City. So the game ended with a 1-0 victory for Man City, with Sterling with a header at the 2nd minute of the game. In terms of the possession, Arsenal had 45%, whereas Man City had 55%. And in terms of shots on and off target, Arsenal had 1 on target, whereas Man City had 3. And when it comes to the fouls conceded, Arsenal had 11 and Man City had 9. In terms of Arsenal, I think they did have the stats, such as it was an even contest when you look at the stats, because Arsenal didn't really create enough clear-cut chances to trouble Ederson, because they only had just 4 shots on target in the whole match for both teams combined. But there was a lot of passing and a lot of touches, as you can see that in terms of the touches there was a lot inside the opposition's box, in terms of 19 and 36 for Manchester City and 19 for Arsenal respectively. So it was an even contest in my opinion, but I think Man City were holding the break most of the time. If they wanted to, they could have just went like they did at the start. They were all over Arsenal. I thought Arsenal was going to concede 3 or 4 literally in the first 2-3 minutes. And Arsenal were lucky they were able to make it all the way to the end, in my opinion. I think Arteta has a lot of work to do with his Arsenal squad, in my opinion, because I see a lot of frailties, a lot of mistakes, a lot of things that need to be sealed, in my opinion, because you see what Arsenal have done. Even though they performed well, even though they tried as much as they can, even though they didn't concede as much as we all expected as Arsenal fans, I think Arsenal need to be more clinical. I think certain players were poor. We're going to get onto the player ratings, but I think in terms of Arsenal overall, I think they didn't have as much shots as expected. They did have some passage of play when I think even after the first minute, the 2nd minute, the goal was, I didn't see it. Their heads did drop down for a little 5 minutes or so, but then after that I think Arsenal started to build some momentum and they started to perform much better. They started to pass the ball much quicker. They started to attack the opposition's box much faster, and I think if there was more clinical shots, in my opinion, like the one that bukayo saka had, which it hit aubameyang like in the 9th, 10th minute, if he was more clinical, then I think Arsenal could have at least secured a draw. I think for me, I think 1-0 is not a fairer result, in my opinion. I think that 2 minutes of sloppy play, I think as Arsenal have been doing like time and time again, that 2 minutes of sloppy play has caused Arsenal a lot of havoc, in my opinion. Because if any Arsenal fans know, even the Arsenal players himself, even Arteta himself knows that we are losing games from our own mistakes. And I think Arsenal dominated at least 60-70 minutes of that game, but I think Manchester City, as I mentioned before, I think they put their handbrake on. I think they were saving their energy for the game, their game in the Champions League. And I think Arsenal were kind of had that chance, but they didn't turn out to be what it was. But hopefully we move on to the next. Hopefully we can get the win in the Europa League, in my opinion. That's more important for me. We have to wait and see what happens. But now we move on to the player ratings. So for me, Kieran Tierney and Bukayo Saka impressed, but as Rob Holding has had a shocker. The Gunners suffered a 1-0 defeat to the runaway Premier League leaders on Sunday evening, a result which stretched City's lead at the summit of the table to 10 points. Defeat to City has left the Gunners toiling in 10th place and a whopping 11 points behind 4th placed West Ham. So now, as I mentioned, we're going to look at the player ratings. And I think for Leno, I'm going to give him a 6 because the German was solid when called upon, but was powerless to prevent City from going into the lead. He made a great save in the 56th minute to stop Ilkay Gundogan from doubling the visitors' lead. Next up, we got Hector Berry, and I think I'm going to give him a 5. This is because the Spaniard was restricted to sporadic forays up the right wing due to City's dominance. Defended valiantly, but was at times out of position, and you can imagine that from where the goal came from. It came from the left hand side where Raheem Sterling was cutting in, but players were switching positions more and more, and it was difficult for Hector Berry, in my opinion. Next up is Rob Holding, and I think he deserves a 4. I think it was one of the poorer performers, in my opinion. The former Bolton man was guilty of allowing Raheem Sterling to ghost in behind him to give City the lead less than 90 seconds after kickoff. Misjudged the fight of football on several occasions and looked completely devoid of confidence. Next up, was Pablo Mari, and he was at the 6s and 7s in the early stages of the match and looked hesitant whenever the ball was played into his feet. He did, however, try on multiple occasions to step into midfield and stop City's attack at the source, so he deserves a 5 in my opinion. Next up is Kieran Tierney. The returning Scotland international struggled to deal with the early trickery of Riyad Mahrez. He should have got closer to in order to prevent from setting up City's opener. Going forward was a different story for the former Celtic man, who provided a useful outlet on the left flank, so I'm going to give him a 6 for his performance. Next up is Mohamed Elneny. Was ignominious for large parts of the game in my opinion, but tried his best to get close to Kevin De Bruyne and Gundogan. So for his performance, I think he deserves a standard 5. Mixed up, we got Granit Xhaka. The normally combative midfielder was guilty of allowing De Bruyne too much time and space on the ball and found himself out of position on more than one occasion, so I think he also deserves 5. Next up is Saka. The young winger was Arsenal's brightest spark in what was an otherwise disappointing performance from the team, but unfortunately for Mikel Arteta, the England Aces teammates weren't able to get him on the ball enough to cause the visitors any serious problems, so I'm going to give him a 6. Next up is Martin Erdegard. The Real Madrid loanee, who was signed for his creative prowess, was unable to make any sort of impact in the number 10 role. The Norwegian's passing let him down on more than one occasion and will have no doubt annoyed his manager, so he deserves a 5 for his performance. Next up, we got Nicola Pepe. Arsenal's record signing cut a full-on figure on the right wing but did little to get himself into the game. The Ivorian did, however, come close to levelling the score in the first half with a scuffed shot, so I'm going to give him a 5 for his performance. Next up is Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, and I think the Gunners' main man cut a frustrated figure for large portions of the match, watching helplessly as City effortlessly retained possession and created chance after chance. So for that reason, I'm going to give Aubameyang a number 5 for his performance. Next up is the subs, and we're going to look at Alexandre Lacazette, and he's the one that replaced Nicola Pepe, and like Pepe, the Frenchman was unable to get himself into the game and ended up being a spectator, so for me, he deserves a 5 for his performance. Next up we got Emil Smith-Rowe, and he replaced Martin Erdegard, and he was unable to get onto the ball as well in the attacking third, but putting a shift in defensively, so I'm going to give him a 5 also for his performance. Then others, we have David Luiz, who replaced Rob Holding for a concussion sub, and Dani Ceballos, who replaced Mohamed Elneny, but these players really didn't play that long into the pitch, so they won't get any player ratings from me. So for me, this was a game Arsenal did have chances here and there, but I think Man City were really nice on Arsenal. They didn't attack as they started off the game, and I think that caught Arsenal off guard at the beginning, but if Man City kept on dominating, I think Arsenal have been getting 3 or 4 in my opinion. Have I seen any improvement? I don't think so. We have to move on to the next game. But other than that, guys, stay tuned for the next video. Remain blessed and peace.